Hello, my name is Mackenzie Daly, and I'm a student studying history with a focus on Japanese history. My research paper examines the relationship between modernization and imperial expansion in Japan during the Meiji period between 1868 and 1895. I became interested in this topic because the transformation of Japan during the late 19th century represents one of the most rapid cases of modernization in global history. Within only a few decades, Japan moved from a feudal political structure under the Tokugawa shogunate to a centralized modern state capable of competing militarily and economically with Western powers. Understanding how and why this transformation occurred raises important questions about the origins of imperialism and the development of modern nation states. The central research question guiding my project is: did Japan's modernization during the Meiji period directly cause its imperial expansion, or did the modernization primarily create the capacity that allowed expansion when geopolitical crises emerged? This question is significant because historians have long debated the relationship between modernization and imperialism. Some scholars argued that industrialization, bureaucratic reform, and military modernization naturally produced expansionist ambitions, similar to those seen in European empires. Others argued that Japan's expansion was primarily a response to geopolitical pressures in East Asia, particularly conflicts with Jin China and the instability in Korea. By examining these competing interpretations, the paper seeks to clarify whether modernization itself created imperial policy, or whether it simply enabled Japan to act when regional political circumstances demanded it. To answer this question, my research used a historical and textual methodology, drawing primarily from political, diplomatic, and intellectual sources. The evidence includes several types of materials. First, the paper examines political reform of the Meiji state, including the abolition of the uh, domin system in 1871, the land tax reform of 1873, and the establishment of the Meiji Constitution in 1899. These reforms demonstrated how Japan centralized political authority and built modern state institutions. Second, the research analyzes economic and industrial development, including the creation of state sponsored industries, infrastructure projects such as railways and telegraph networks, and the emergence of modern banking system. Third, the paper investigates military reforms, particularly the introduction of universal conscription in 1873 and the modernization of the Japanese military, particularly the Navy and Army along European models. Finally, the research draws on intellectual and ideological sources, particularly the writings of Fukuzawa Yukichi, whose discussions of civilization, education, and national strength shaped the intellectual climate of the Meiji period. By combining uh, political, military, and intellectual evidence, my study evaluates how modernization changed Japan's capabilities and how geopolitical tensions influenced the decide to expand. The evidence suggests that the modernization, or I'm sorry, the evidence suggests that modernization did not automatically lead to imperial expansion. Instead, modernization created the institutional and military capacity that made expansion possible. Political centralization allowed the government to coordinate national policy and collect reliable tax revenue. Industrial development provided the economic resources needed to sustain military modernization. Military reforms created a professional national army and navy capable of operating beyond Japan's borders. However, the actual decision to pursue imperial expansion occurred in response to geopolitical crises, particularly the struggle for influence over Korea in the late 19th century. These tensions ultimately culminated in the First Sino-Japanese War of 1894 to 1895, where Japan's modernized military achieved decisive victories over Qing China. The outcome of the war demonstrated the effectiveness of Japan's modernization efforts and marked the country's emergence as a major regional power. Although the paper focuses on the period between 1868 and 1895, research raises several additional questions for future study. One important area for further investigation is how Japan's earlier imperial expansion influenced later developments, particularly the growth of Japanese imperialism in the early 20th century. Another area involves exploring domestic political debates within Japan, including political parties, journalists, and public opinion, and how they influenced foreign policy decisions. Finally, further research could examine comparative cases of modernization and imperialism, such as Germany or Russia, in order to better understand whether Japan's experience was unique or part of a broader global pattern. Overall, study the relationship between modernization and imperial expansion in Meiji Japan helps historians better understand how rapidly changing political and economic systems can reshape international power dynamics.